So today on the workbench I've got myself a Samsung Galaxy Tab A 8-inch 2016 model. Now I've done one of these in the past, but I thought I'll do a revised version of this video, and being I had one of these dropped in recently, it was worthwhile getting into it. So first thing to do, check to see if you've got an SD card installed, and if you also have the model that contains a SIM card, make sure they're both removed prior to attempting to open them. So here I'm using a little flat blade tool, a pry tool it's called, to get inside of it. So the back cover separates from the front of the device. Now be careful around the headphone jack on the bottom. That bit of plastic tends to break just by how weak it is and how little amount of plastic is there. But as you can see, you can feel the clips undo as you work your way around it. And once you finally get the back cover off, there's two things here. Down the bottom we've got the battery, which has got a little bit of tape over it. You should be able to use some tweezers to peel that off. And also I use the same tweezers to pry it open as well. I typically start from the left hand side, which has the two negative terminals, or the two black cables if you're not sure what you're looking for. And you should be able to pry that off and out. And then from there, the next part, this cable up here, that one there connects to the digitizer, which is the touch panel at the front. So now that's been disconnected. From there I've had this sitting down, face down on my heat pad at 60 degrees for about 10 minutes just to soften up the adhesive. I do find quite a large amount of adhesive up the top of here. I'm still using my flat pry tool here to get inside the device. Also using a little blade here just to keep a bit of separation, so I can kind of slice through the glue. If you do have a heat gun rather than a heat pad, it's definitely recommended to be applying heat, preferably while prying, but if you don't have that option or a second person to do that, apply the heat, take it off heat, and then try and pry a bit more. And once you do get past the top section, the sides themselves, on the side bits of glass, there's very little glue there, so they're quite easy to pry open. As you can see, it does take a bit of struggling, but with a bit of extra heat in this location, it should lift up a bit easier. So now I've separated the majority of it. I'm just putting it down to get a bit more heat into it. Give it a little bit of time. So with the heat gun you won't need to worry about doing that. Anyway, back to it. It's been on for a little bit longer. And there's a bit less adhesive down the bottom compared to the top, which should make it a bit easier to pry open. Now with this, we've got the back button and the menu button. That's part of the digitizer, so there's not a cable running through to it. So that you don't have to be too cautious about. You do have to be cautious about the button. Try to keep your tool relatively flat and parallel with the glass, rather than digging downwards into the body of it, because then you have a chance of ripping the cable there. Another thing, try to avoid breaking it off into shards. That does make the removal process a lot more difficult. If you can keep it as one single panel, it's definitely the preferred way to get it out and open. And then that also saves on cleanup afterwards, where you don't have to worry about all little glass shards prior to installing the new panel. So as you can see, I've finally removed the old digitizer. Now in this video I did edit out a part, but I did also quickly just reinstall the new touch panel just to make sure it was functioning correctly prior to installing the new piece. Kind of annoys you when you're fully install a new screen and find out the replacement part was faulty. So if you get it to this stage here, where you've also removed the tape, any extra glass shards that you have on the front of the screen, I would recommend to take the time just to quickly pass through the digitizer flex cable, connect it up and give it a quick test. Don't even bother removing the protective tape or anything like that, or the film on the inside, just in case. So cleaning up, I do prefer to use an old toothbrush just because that gives it usually a more efficient way of removing old glass shards, and then a microfiber cloth over the top just to make sure there's no specks. And then from here I'm going to be applying some double-sided, or not 3M tape, but very similar stuff. I've chosen to use a blackest variety, or black variety of tape as opposed to the red. The black I find a bit more chunky, and that does give a degree of separation from the display to the digitizer. If you use tape that's too thin, you can get really odd spot bubbles on the screen itself, so it would look like there's, I'm not sure how else to describe it, but I've seen it in the past where it looks like just a round bubble stuck underneath the screen, which is where it's making contact, and it just definitely doesn't look good. I believe it's also known as a haloing effect. But anyway, I've decided with the thicker tape just to avoid this in the future. Anyway, be careful, avoid and just use a decent amount of tape, enough that it's not going to let go, but also not too much that if you have to remove it, it's going to drive you mad and break the piece that's already in there. Anyway, I'll let this play out for a little bit longer. So now I'm removing just the old tape off there, or removing the actual film off the older tape. Being it's double-sided, as you can see, it's turning from white to black. You'll need to do this on all the pieces. Coming up now, just make sure there's no specks of dust underneath. And here come, I've removed the backing tape off the digitizer, I've removed the film off the inside of it. So right now it's ready to go through. Now, depending on your model of tab A, you may have a speaker grill up the top. This particular model, the Wi-Fi one, doesn't. As you can see, there's a hole there near my thumb for a front-facing earpiece speaker. Anyway, I've just connected up the digitizer, reconnect the battery. Go ahead and put the tape back over the battery itself. Not vital, but if it's there, I might as well go back. And now I'm just working my thumb around the outer perimeter, also double checking that the home button is functioning. Sometimes it does get stuck. So make sure before you fully push it down that that button does have some space to click in freely. And hopefully, if you've removed all the glass, you should be right to put that in without cracking it. And then just the reinstallation of the back cover. This one has clips all around the edges, so you should be able to press the body of the device and you should feel a good snap as you work your way around it. Once you've finished that, you've pretty much completed the whole job. Turn it on, make sure you don't get any haloing effects or any dead spots on your touch panel, and hopefully from there your tab A8 is ready to go again. Catch you in the next one. Bye.